Welcome back to Event Tech Live, USA and Canada 2021, and to the main stage and to our next session, the future of events as marketing vehicles. And I'm delighted to welcome back friend of Event Tech Live, Mr. Mark Gordon joins us. Mark, hello and welcome to Event Tech Live.
Hey there, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I almost said good evening, but of course I've got to remember that we're broadcasting from the UK at the moment. But of course, the vast majority of people tuning into Event Tech Live in this particular incarnation, of course, are in North America. So a very good afternoon to all of our friends over there who are tuning into the show. Mark, I know you've got a great lineup of guests on your panel today for us. So I'm going to hand straight over to you to get cracking with it. And I'll see you a little bit later on for questions.
Cool. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. Thanks for sort of watching. Yeah, massive session this. I'm going to put my, stake my reputation that this will probably be the best session throughout the whole of Event Tech Live. No pressure, lads. But what are we going to be talking about? So we're talking today about the future of events as marketing vehicles. Now, marketing via events is as old as events themselves. With all due diligence in place, it's the proven way to engage customers and prospects and launch brands and ideas, create discussions and form relationships in a speedy, cost-effective way. But here we want to ask, how much of virtual and hybrid events, now secure ingredients in the promotion model, impacted on the part events play in the entire marketing mix? What has changed in the last 18 months? Now, my name is Mark Gordon. I'm the Key Account Director at Expo Platform. My background, I've been knocking around this industry for 26 years now, worked with some of the largest organisers in the world, the UBMs, and Media 10s, Informers of this world, and now, as I say, I find myself at Expo Platform. But I will be moderating this session, so you'll be glad to know you won't be hearing much of me, hopefully. But what I'd like to do is introduce you the titans of this industry that we have joining me today. And so we're going to go around the room and get them to introduce themselves. So I think we'll start with Ray. Would you like to introduce yourself, please, sir?
Good evening or good afternoon. My name is Ray Bugg. I'm one of the smaller fry. I wouldn't describe myself as a titan, more of a minnow. I have a small event company based in Scotland. We were one of the early pivots over to virtual. We organised 10 events annually, including an expo for the IT and digital consumer at an enterprise level. So we work in verticals like oil and gas, finance, and then work into different technology verticals as well. In addition to that, we have a community of about 11,000 IT professionals who we service through our news and opinion site, digit.fyi. So a very brief introduction from me.
Thank you very much, Ray. Jason, we'll go to you next.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jason Popp, CEO of Moss. We are a production supplier for the events industry, serving mostly design houses, agency, exhibit, and design firms. I've been here for the past 7 months. Before this, I was president of international at GES, one of the largest service suppliers to the events industry. There I was really working in event tech with the acquisitions that we did of N200, which was registration software, and Pokken, which was effectively attendee engagement software, which we put together and are now really the incarnation of Visit by GES, which is a very interesting product. So I'm actually here in Chicago, so I'm based where a lot of the attendees are at Moss's world headquarters here. We've got operations as well throughout Europe and Asia.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jason. And last but by no means least, Toby, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, before I do, though, I'm sure we're all wondering where Ray got that amazing virtual background from and how can we get hold of one? Because that's pretty phenomenal. You didn't even reference it in any way, man. All right, so yeah, I'm Toby Daniels.
Somebody else to pick up on it. Yeah. This is my wife's fitness studio, which is my conservatory as well. And I've been relegated as a conservatory because it's 8 o'clock UK time, sleeping kids. So I've been booted out of the house.
There you go. Fair enough. Good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm Toby Daniels, Chief Innovation Officer at Adweek, also the founder and chair of Social Media Week. We recently sold Social Media Week to Adweek, hence why I am now operating as a corporate sellout, but very much enjoying that experience. Prior to that, and over the course of about 12 years, I ran Crowdcentric Media, which owned and operated Social Media Week, a conference that I'm sure most people, I hope, will have heard of. Launched in 2009 here in New York City, scaled to about 30 cities, about 22 international markets over the course of that time. And had a pretty incredible experience in the process. Prior to that, I'm actually really from the sort of the world of technology. I started an agency back in the UK in the early 2000s, building websites. Later, sort of moved into the social media, social networking world before embarking upon building an events business. Great to be here. Very much appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So let's dive straight in. We've got over the next sort of half an hour. Let's see if we can solve this, shall we? The first question I just wanted to ask you guys, so we'll go straight to the crux of the matter. So obviously a lot has changed in the last 18 months. So, but in what positive ways do we feel that the establishment of hybrid and virtual events have impacted on the importance of the events industry to marketers? And I think we'll start with Ray there, but if you can just refrain from salsa-ing while you're doing it, that would be great.
For us, it was something we picked up as we went along, because obviously we were very unaware of how marketers were going to react to moving from a physical presence to a virtual. One of the first things we did, though, is we dropped the data exclusion zone that we used to have on our physical events. And for example, our physical events, we'd have a strict sharing of data from opt-in only, but we moved over to legitimate interests and made that a condition of booking. So we could increase the ROI for marketers and the opportunity for marketers who invested into events by giving them all of the data. That didn't impact on numbers. It hasn't resulted in many more unsubscribes from communications. On the whole, it's made very little difference at all. I think one thing that marketers have realised is it's not a quick win with virtual events. I think they're recognising that you're there for brand presence, and then it's a slow burn thereafter. Whereas obviously you can shake hands and do deals at physical events much more readily and easily. So that's the fundamental difference that we've noticed.
Right, great. Toby, do you think that it might be a case at the moment that absence has made the heart grow fonder, and that marketers are now itching to get back and more involved in events?
I don't know about that. I mean, look, just to go back to what Ray was saying, I mean, first of all, I think the pandemic, outside of just the extraordinarily devastating impact it's had, like economically for many people and businesses, and obviously the ways in which it's impacted people globally, I would say that the pandemic has probably been one of the greatest gifts for event marketers, and in a way for marketers in general, in part because, as we all know, the extent to which we have witnessed transformation, particularly around technology adoption over the course of a year, probably represents about 10 years worth of progress. And that's important to kind of recognize first and foremost. There has never been a point in history where human beings have simultaneously adopted a technology faster than over the course of the last year and a half, right? So that's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand, and the reason why it's a gift, at least in my opinion, is because when you really sort of look at the fundamentals of marketing, and in particular look at what event marketers specifically were looking to achieve, like what their primary objectives ultimately were, right? Create awareness, build reputation, generate leads, like whatever it might be. The fundamentals of why you do event marketing, whether it's in person or virtually, are basically the same. How you execute is different, of course. And what we found over the course of the last year, and I think this is the most important point for us to kind of spend time talking about, is that virtual is better and more effective at certain things, particularly in terms of driving marketing efficacy, right? The data is better and more reliable, right? We can create frictionless opportunities for people to participate. Driving leads and identifying prospects is way more straightforward through digital and virtual than it is in person. And of course, in person offers opportunities for marketers that cannot be matched and probably will never be matched by the virtual alternative experiences. But ultimately, it's not one or the other, or even necessarily hybrid. The most important thing to understand is that if, as a marketer, virtual enables you to achieve certain marketing objectives better than in person, and vice versa. And that's, I think, a kind of important point. To your point about, like, are people itching to get back, or is there a huge sort of untapped and unmet demand at the moment in terms of being able to attend events? Yes, certainly to an extent. But my prediction is, and I'll end on this, my prediction is that we have already seen a massive adjustment, obviously, because we have been presented with restrictions, reasons why we can't attend events. But as things open up, those restrictions are lifted. And the adjustment that I'm looking at, that I'm most interested in, is what is the percentage of professionals who will now, in the future and potentially forever, decide not to get on a plane and travel to go to an in-person event, because it's better that they don't, for environmental reasons, for physical health reasons, and for mental health reasons. And that's something that we have to kind of look at closely, because if that adjustment is like 5%, we're talking about a massive amount of change. So, that's just one way of, I think, looking at it.
Thank you. Jason, you were telling us in the green room that you'd obviously just landed. Actually, you've just come from a physical event, World of Concrete in Vegas. I mean, obviously, when you were sort of wandering around and sort of having a look around that, did you see any sort of massive change in the attitudes of people there? Did you see marketers doing anything different? I mean, was there anything positive that you saw on the show floor there that you feel actually was as a direct result of the last 18 months being locked in your study or your bedroom?
You said it perfectly. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And that was what I heard loud and clear. So I spent a lot of yesterday walking around, speaking to exhibitors, asking them about their experience over the last 15 months, what brought them to the particular show, what made them get on an airplane and spend time on site in Vegas in June in 100-degree heat. And they missed it. I mean, just to be really clear, they missed it. Now, this is a very physical show, right? World of Concrete. It's all about heavy machinery, and so therefore probably less applicable in an online or virtual environment. But they were dying to be out there meeting decision makers, adding to their pipeline, showing their wares physically, doing demonstrations, and you could just feel the palpable excitement. There was this feeling for all of us who've been in the industry for a long time. On opening morning, I came in on the monorail. Everybody was exiting at the same time. The exhibitors were wearing their brightly colored corporate clothing. There was just this sort of excitement in the air that we've all missed. So I think we're going to have that buzz for a while. Of course, the show is different. It was not nearly as busy as prior shows. That's to be expected. It was happening at an off-cycle time. There were no international attendees. There were no international exhibitors. Informa did a wonderful job putting it on. The LVCC really went to all efforts. It was a major win for us as an industry, and it was great to be there and just to feel that excitement in person. And I think, to just address Toby's point, I think they will coexist. There's always going to be a reason that people want to be there in person, meeting decision makers. The one thing that I did hear from exhibitors without fail was we had basically digital check-in. There were no lanyards and no badges. That was a major negative. People want to know who's walking the show floor, who they're talking to, are they another vendor or are they a buyer? So that's something that I definitely think the industry is going to have to address going forward.
I think so. Just to add to that, one of the things that we're seeing, certainly when at my time right at the end of Informa last year, now at Expo Platform, is I think with everyone sort of being isolated from each other, there's that real need now for that sense of community. to come back. And I think this is something that we've certainly seen, certainly in the associations market, but also some of the sort of larger shows as well, where they are trying to not just be part center of a community or of a world or an industry over 3 days, but now looking further afield. And I think that's a real sort of positive that we're seeing with marketers buying into that. I know, Ray, you definitely have got quite tight-knit communities that you serve as well. Are you seeing that with marketers as well? Are they looking to get that more regular face-to-face or video chat to video chat sort of connection with their peers?
At least one of us has to
Okay.
not be muted.
So I'm not.
Oh, sorry guys, was I on mute there? 90% of my audience live 50 miles away from our business and 50 miles away from our venues. So 90% of Scotland's population lives in the central belt. That is the audience that we service. So the move back to us for physical events is going to be a very, very simple one. And we may have a simplified hybrid element of that initially with our first couple of events that we do physically, just to, for risk purposes, just to make sure that we do capture 100% of those people that want to attend. But the sentiment that we're getting at the minute is let's get back to physical. But looking at Toby and you guys, in the international markets, I think that the hybrid version, I think, is going to win the day hands down. I don't think even when the pandemic clears, I think we're still going to see people going, and as Toby quite rightfully alluded to earlier on, who's going to want to jump on a plane every 5 minutes? Who's going to want the stress, the cost, the expenditure, being away from their family to do something which they can do what we're doing right now? So for me, no, it's very, very simple. We're local. So we're not going to be faced with that challenge.
I'd also love, I would love us to kind of redefine a few things, right? Let's come up with some new terminology and ways in which we talk about things. And this is not really sort of a point of criticism, but it's just more of a kind of, like, we have this opportunity, right? We have almost like a sort of a blank canvas to think about the future. So first of all, let's just all agree to stop talking about going back, right? Because that's not happening. It's basically impossible unless you have a time machine. Let's talk about how we are moving forward into the future and what the future looks like on the basis that we have this incredible opportunity to do things in a different way. The other thing I'd like to do is to be really clear about when we talk about community, what do we really mean? Community doesn't mean meeting in person. And to foster and develop and nurture and deepen your connection within a community is not predicated on the idea that you have to be meeting people in person either, right? To your point about international markets, I think that's really true. We are a truly global business with a global community and global audiences in, hundreds of countries around the world, right? It's much easier for us to cater to the needs of these people through digital and virtual means than it is to bring them all together through some physical event. So what I would urge us to think about, particularly when we think about this in the context of marketing, right? And how events and how we convene and gather for the purposes of marketing should think about the future is by evaluating the opportunity and our decisions to either host an event and encourage people to meet in person versus doing something virtually according to what it is you are trying to achieve. And if we start there, I think we'll start to make better decisions. We'll start to break out of this legacy way of thinking that has held the event industry back, I think, for so many years, and hopefully avoid a situation where, much like the print industry and print businesses start to see decline during the advent of digital, that the physical event business can recognize that actually decline, a shrinkage, less events, fewer opportunities to get on a plane and travel around the world might actually be better. And that, I think, should be something we should be spending more time talking about.
I couldn't agree more. I think that what you're also finding now is that events are not local anymore. They're not even national. They could be international. So, I mean, you mentioned about the travel there as well, but I think in terms of marketers, what they've got to think about now is not just, if I'm a marketer in the US, for example, and that's my territory, I might be going to an event now and marketing myself at an event, but I might be tapping into Asia or the Middle East or something like that. So I think actually for event organizers, what this does, it actually gives us the opportunity to tap into more budget. We're not just talking to our local rep of a particular company. If they're an international company, there are global budgets that you can now go after, and there's actually a better reason for them to spend the money with us as well. So in terms of, I mean, obviously we were talking about the positive ways, though there were some negative in there as well. I mean, do we think there are any more sort of negative impacts on the standing events within the whole marketing mix that's happened thanks to the rise of hybrid and digital? Jason, I don't know if you've got any sort of ideas along that lines.
In terms of negative impacts, not as much, other than we're in a brave new world, right? We're all trying to figure out what this, and I agree with Ray completely. Hybrid is the way to go. And I think, Toby's right. You can convene many of these events digitally, but I think they're better when people have got a sort of social basis to fall back on. I know that I had been a part of many virtual events through the 15 months that we were largely stuck at home. But the ones that really worked were with people that I had met and been together with socially, had drinks with, etc. We are social animals as humans. So I think that the two have to coexist. My only point would be, we're all trying to figure this out now. Exhibitors are trying to work out where their budgets should sit going forward. And they're making, these are corporate marketers making decisions about their forecast on budgets and what percent is going to go to digital going forward, what percent are going to go to in-person. And then those of us in the supply chain are trying to react to that. And we don't really have any historical clues or things that we can fall back on that are going to give us a sense of what it looks like going forward.
Okay, interested. One of the things that I've heard is about the cost of events, and that basically the virtual dollar, if you like, is worth less than the physical dollar. And what that might have done is actually sort of getting marketers to question the cost of event, because we all know that a physical event, for example, is not a cheap exercise in marketing. Do you actually think that that's the case? I mean, is that going to happen? And if so, how do you think we can combat this? I'll go back to you, Toby, because I know that you've mentioned this in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to look at it that way. And certainly I think at the point at which we all made this collective pivot last year, one of the biggest challenges was convincing kind of both sponsors and attendees that the equivalent experience that we're looking to try and provide is going to drive as much value, right? Whether you're a sponsor looking to generate leads or whether you're an attendee looking to access content and network and connect with other people, it's really hard. And I'm not saying that actually it's even possible to make that argument, but the experience I've had over the last year and what I've ultimately learned is it's the wrong conversation to be having. The right conversation to be having when you create a little bit of distance between that initial pivot and today is to sit down simply with your sponsor, for example, and say, what is it you want to achieve? Like, what are your goals? How can we help to impact your business? Or how can we help to drive business results? And then put in front of them essentially a package, a proposal, whatever it might be, and a set of deliverables and a price tag that is equal to what they get in return, right? So in other words, don't sort of shy away from continuing to position these products as premium if ultimately you have the confidence that you can still continue to drive results. What we have found is that sponsoring a virtual event for most of our sponsors, and we're talking about major global companies like Facebook, TikTok, Oracle, Salesforce, right? These companies, we have been able to deliver better results, right? A higher return. And so we've been able to command the same in some sort of cases, price points, and from a sponsorship standpoint, as we were able to before. And I think it's really about looking them in the eye, asking them that question, and then delivering the results. And if you can deliver the results, then I don't necessarily think that a virtual dollar has to be less than an in-person dollar. On the attendance side, it's a little bit more tricky. We're here to talk about marketing, so I won't spend so much time talking about that. There is a legacy issue, almost like a cultural issue in the world of physical versus digital among individuals. Individual people are used to accessing things for free on the internet, right? It's the reason why print businesses really struggled to make the pivot from print to digital over the course of the last like 10 to 20 years is because they just decided to put all of their content on the internet for free and then monetize against eyeballs or monetize through display advertising, which, as we know, was proven out to be a pretty shitty business model. So now that shift towards premium subscription paywalls, right, is such a hugely important trend as we're seeing in the content gain today. And that is because it's not sustainable to put your content, and in this context, your event experiences, onto the internet and not actually charge for it. There has to be some kind of value exchange. If you're able to monetize your events through sponsorship, great, that's the value exchange right there. But a better business model, at least in my opinion, is to make sure that you are generating sponsorship dollars and also dollars from ticketing. Ultimately, and the primary reason is because you will only see your business continue to decline over time if that is the strategy that you follow.
It's an interesting point Toby makes about the virtual dollar there, because when we were selling virtual events to marketers that were used to working with us physically, the first thing that I would say would be, well, how much do you spend to come to a physical event? You invest into me, you invest into materials, you invest into travel, you invest into your team to come up. There's probably a bar bill that's the biggest expenditure. And you know, you're probably spending fourfold what you've invested into us for the space at our event. We're not changing our prices, but you are going to save X amount as a result of that from the start, and we're going to give you more data. So for us, it was a value add, but also taking them down the journey of what this actually entailed for them in terms of resource and investment of time and materials.
I think that's what's really exciting about this, though. Sorry, is you know, it's the experimentation that this is going to drive, right? We've traditionally, and I've spent, you know, my career here in the physical space, and we always thought about cost per square meters, cost per square foot. And I think that's all up for change. And as Toby was talking about, these new models are going to evolve from digital to the physical worlds. And we may now start to see organizers charging per lead, right? Charging, you know, per MQL. And that experimentation hopefully is going to drive more interest for marketers in our industry. That's what's really exciting to me.
Fantastic. So the big question is, I suppose, is in what way has a marketer's attitude and needs changed since the pandemic started? And also, more importantly, as event organizers, how can we take advantage of it? Who would like to go and answer that question first?
It's tough for me to answer that because we're a local events company and a lot of our clients are local. We're not having to have that discussion probably as much as Toby's probably having to have it, because the question that we keep getting asked is, when are you going to reinvent your physical event and resume that type of activity? I was about to say go back to physical events then, but I swear. Yeah. So and that is a big, you know, thought process for us, is how can we now resell this proposition, repackage new, better customer experience, better user experience, and completely reframe it? But that is what they're asking for. So probably not best to come from me, because we're just not geared up for that with our audience.
Is this the point where I'm supposed to say that, like, physical event organizers are supposed to get their shit together? I can't remember. Anyway, I do have a point of view on this. And actually, let me like, I actually want to kind of reference something that I think is super interesting. So I just hosted an event virtually, believe it or not, but with our partners, Facebook, and about 50 or so industry leaders in the world of sort of marketing, many of whom are like stakeholders within their business in terms of thinking about how they activate at many of our industries, like major tentpole events like CES and Cannes and, you know, other sort of similar sized events. And we wanted to kind of convene this group. We wanted to discuss and talk about the future of in-person gatherings. And so, you know, we answered some questions that were certainly helpful in regards to providing us some like actual data points, right? Particularly around things like, are you planning to attend more or less in-person events in 22, right? So in other words, compared to pre-pandemic, are you intending on are you planning on attending more or less events? And what was interesting was that over a third of people said that they actually plan to attend less events. And it has nothing to do with whether it's going to be safe or whether the protocols will be in place or any concerns around contracting the virus. It has everything to do with the fact that they now recognize that if they are going to attend an event, if they're going to invest the time and resources, it has to be worthwhile. I encourage everyone actually to read a book that I came across last year. It's called Essentialism. I forget the name of the author now, but Essentialism is something that's really helpful for us to be, as event organizers, to be thinking about, because it's a way to think about whether what you are producing as an event is essential, because it has to be essential for it to be worthwhile, right? And so if people are looking to attend fewer events, right, what are they looking for from those events that they're looking to attend? And what we found, again, when we sort of polled this group of people, is that they want to attend less, but they want the events that they are going to attend to be more effective, right? They don't want to do less networking. They don't want to meet less people. They don't want to access less thought leadership. They just want to attend less physical events. And I think that's, like, I don't know, so important for us to think about. Again, particularly kind of like as marketers, because what it encourages us, like as an industry of event organizers, what it encourages us to do is to make sure that when we think about the events that we're producing, that they are going to be worthwhile for people, and that they are going to deliver not just at the levels that they used to pre-pandemic, but they deliver over and above people's expectations in the future.
Fantastic. Jason, what about yourself? What have you seen, sort of any changes that marketers are going through thanks to the pandemic, or are you, and how do you think we could take advantage of them?
Yeah, I think just building on what Toby just said, you know, if people are going to be looking for fewer but better from their in-person events, I think that really drives two sort of next level bits of thinking. Number one is we have to understand what they want better, right? There has to be a better dialogue between the event organizer and the exhibitors / sponsors, and in particular the attendees / visitors. So if they're going to, if these tentpole events need to be better and more effective, let's understand, let's talk to our customers in a much more effective way. Secondly, it's going to be around data and data capture. And I think, you know, compared to virtual events, I agree with the point that we have been traditionally poor at gathering data. And some of us in the physical world were trying to address that. I mean, that was partly what I was trying to address when we acquired a registration company and put it together with an engagement company, was to be able to understand who is attending the event and what are they doing when they're walking around the physical manifestation. Where are they checking in? Which exhibitors are they seeing? What sessions are they going to? In what order are they doing it? And what is the duration of each of those activities? So we were trying to get at that kind of measurement, that depth of measurement in the physical environment as you get in the virtual environment. But for me, those are the two conclusions. You need to understand your customers a lot better, so you have to create that dialogue. And secondly, we have to become much more effective at measuring in the physical environment. That's going to drive much more investment and experimentation in some of those technologies out there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, it seems like the time is against us. I know we can certainly talk about this for a lot longer. Certainly from my point of view, I've learned, I mean, there's two things absolutely that I've learned from this. One, between Ray's Zumba studio and Toby's Peloton in the background, my fitness goals is woeful compared to you guys. So event organizers, we need to sort that out as an industry. But to get back on topic as well, I think, yes, there is a change out there, but it's a good one. This is a really exciting time for the industry. And yes, there hasn't been as much spend with us as what there was 18 months ago. but it's coming back. And just like England in the European Championships, we know that budget, it's coming home. So what we'd like to do now, I know there's plenty of questions that are sort of flying in, so I would like to invite someone to come along and ask them.
Guys, the first thing I'm going to do is hold up the pivot card of destiny for using the word pivot more than 3 times in that session. So you have the pivot board. I'm going to put that away. Mark, thanks very much for putting that panel together. It's great to see and hear from you again. And a couple of points that I've noted during that session, and a couple of things that I picked up on. Something that Toby was saying towards the end there, audiences going to fewer events. That straight away to me says that when they do go to an event, it's going to make those people a far more attractive proposition to exhibitors or marketers who are there. Surely that's something that can be spun very, very positively. It sounds in first glance like a negative thing, but fewer people means that when they do choose to go, they want to be there. Therefore, you've got to up your game. I'm throwing it over there. I'm throwing the ball over there.
Let me add something to that. I think it's. Thank you for picking up on that point, and then I'll just add more to it if I may.
Please.
So listen, this isn't me tooting my own horn, but we launched Social Media Week in 2009 as a hybrid conference, day one. That's 12, 13 years ago. Live streamed, mobile, social integration to enhance the experience, to enable us to reach much larger audiences globally. We've been doing that format and hybrid events for well over a decade. The last year, thankfully, the entire world has caught up and recognizes there are massive advantages, huge benefits to being able to reach audiences digitally, as well as being able to reach them through a physical event. But this format has been around for almost 100 years. And here's why. Well, actually, not 100 years. However long TV has been around. How long have we been broadcasting sports? Last week, I interviewed the chief marketing officer for the Milwaukee Bucks, and I asked him about how they pull up the card again for me just a second, how they made the pivot as a major sporting franchise from hosting a live sporting event with fans in stadium to no fans in stadium to playing sports within a bubble to then transitioning back to a point where they can start to bring fans back. And what do we learn from that experience? The most important thing to understand about sports is that they've had people in their stadium who are motivated and will pay a premium to be there in person. And then they have people at home watching the same game who have different goals, different needs, different objectives, right? And you can satisfy both of those two audiences. We need to be starting to think like sports, right, as an entire industry as we start to think about hybrid. Because here's the thing, the biggest problem is hybrid could potentially be the worst of both worlds, not the best, because it's really easy to create an experience where your virtual audience are treated and feel like second-class citizens. And that's something that we absolutely have to avoid.
Can I pick up on that point, Toby, and just say that in that analogy, and that's something that's cropped up on the Event Industry News podcast a lot in the last few months when I've been speaking to people, is this analogy that we've had hybrid events for years. That's what a football match is, that's broadcast on Sky, but where there are 80,000 people in the stadium. Now, in that particular scenario, you have the stadium operations who are dealing with the physical crowd, and then you have the broadcast company, be it whoever, NBC, Sky, ESPN, whoever it may be, they're responsible for delivering the TV content. And is that the mistake that organisers are making at the moment, is thinking that they can do it all themselves? And actually, they need to look at sporting events and realise, actually, let's have one team of people dedicated to the physical and another team of people completely dedicated to delivering the other element of it. And let's do both well rather than doing them both like a pile of crap.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone has different needs, different objectives, different reasons why you're attending or participating or engaging with this particular live experience. And it's really interesting because like the Milwaukee Bucks, they actually asked their fans, they said, what is the number one reason why you pay for a ticket to attend this event in person? You know what the answer was? Community. access to community, which kind of obviously contradicts everything that I said earlier, but in the context of a live sporting event, number one reason for turning up was because of community, right? It's they wanted to be around other people, right? But just because their goal is community driven for why they will spend an exorbitant amount of money to sit and watch the live sport in a stadium, doesn't necessarily mean that like that objective is worth more or less than the objective of sitting back on your couch, right, drinking a beer and being able to watch it from the comfort of your own home. Two fundamentally different sets of people with different needs and different objectives. And to your point, yeah, we have to cater to their needs in different ways. You have to design the experience that is specific to what they want to get out of the experience. And then when it comes to like business models, yeah, I mean, like, you know, the marketing effort in terms of how you put brands in front of fans when they're sitting at home versus how you put brands in front of fans when they're sitting in the stadium, it's fundamentally different and probably executed by two very different sets of teams.
Mm-hmm. If I can turn my attention, sorry.
Yeah, we all
just
jump in that one. That was good.
Yeah, I mean, just to your point on that, I do think that the organizers are addressing it differently. I mean, the opportunity is to have different organizing teams working on the in-person event and the virtual event. And I think that is happening. These are different skill sets. I would also say, just to your point on in the sports world, they're self-reinforcing, right? If you are a part of an in-person event because you want the community that Toby's talking about, you're also more likely to become a fan and to be buying merchandise and spending time watching it on the television as well. So I think it's a great example of how hybrid can work and become a self-reinforcing mechanism.
I don't think we're going to see enough organisers take it on, though, because I think that the risk of having to increase your capital expenditure investment into that event with no guaranteed return, I think is going to be a shortfall for a number of event organisers moving forward.
It's Darwinism, man. It's Darwinism.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more, Toby. Couldn't agree more.
And that's okay. And that's okay. There are going to be events and businesses that will not be able to survive during this time. And as hard as that might sound, or harsh as it might sound, the truth is that that is just the natural kind of order of things. That is the way in which this industry will have to evolve.
If I can just direct everybody's attention who's tuning into this session just to the grip chat that is, I think, just over there on the screen as you're looking at me. There's some great links and comments that have been posted into that grip chat during this session. So if anybody wants to maybe explore some of those links and some of the interaction that some of our audience members have been kind enough to put in there, they can do that. We've had a couple of questions come in. We've got, you know, what are your highlights with virtual and hybrid events over the past year that perhaps you would not have been able to accomplish in the physical scene? Similarly, on the flip side, what have been some of your worst experiences? Does anybody want to quickly rattle through a couple of best and worst in sort of 60 seconds before we have to wrap up?
Worst tech issues.
Yeah.
Go, Ray.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Worst is tech issues. You know, certain elements of the platform not working. You know, your hands are tied. You can't, you know, reboot the platform midway through an event. So that's been the only bogey for me. Has been tech issues. Upside, more people coming, more eyes on. So you know, that's been a huge plus. But at the same time, we are seeing audiences diminish in the virtual world, and we're seeing that across the industry at the minute as well.
Mark, let's come to you finally.
Personalization. Certainly, in terms of sort of the virtual events, it's being able to give people the experience that they want, and it comes back to actually what Toby was talking about. You know, you can, with a hybrid event, you choose the experience that you want, and you can actually do that with virtual. When it's the Netflix sort of idea, isn't it, where you can, you know, if I choose to binge watch something, I can do it there. But certainly, I think that's what's really starting to come forward and been a very big plus from what we've experienced, is that ability for us to think about, okay, what is that one person's personalized experience? How can we help them achieve that? And you'll see that with platforms doing AI or creating virtual worlds and stuff like that. But that will be my big plus.
We've been joined today by Jason Popp, Mark Gordon, Ray Bugg and Toby Daniels, talking about the future of events as marketing vehicles here on the main stage at Event Tech Live, USA, Canada 2021. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. Mark, thanks for putting that session together and chairing it so ably. And the eyebrows of the week so far go to Ray Bugg for the raised eyebrows when described as a titan at the start of this session by Mark. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining Event Tech Live. It's been great to see you. We'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Take care.